Imagine this, a secret document, right? A single chapter, yanked from a book right before it was published, and it's filled with explosive allegations about one of the most powerful women in modern history. A story so scandalous, it was supposedly kept under wraps for decades.
So, what could possibly be in this chapter? That's the big question we're tackling today. We're going to dive into one of the most controversial, and I should say, unverified texts in Indian political history, the so-called Shiji chapter. Let's start from the top. Where in the world did this thing even come from?
Okay, so before we get to all the juicy, scandalous details, we've got to understand the document itself. Let's just lay out the basic facts here.
The text we're talking about is known simply as Shi. The story goes that it was a missing chapter from a book by a man named M.O. Mathai, who was a seriously powerful figure himself. But this chapter? Well, it was supposedly cut right before the book went to print.
And why was it cut? Well, the central claim is an absolute bombshell. It alleges a secret 12-year-long love affair between the author, Mathai, and Indira Gandhi, who was not only the daughter of his boss, but would one day be Prime Minister herself.
But here's the thing, and it is a huge thing. From the very beginning, there are massive questions about whether this chapter is even real. In fact, one source claims the book's publisher once admitted the whole idea of a secret chapter was just a marketing stunt. If that's true, well, it pretty much blows the whole story up before we even get started.
So who were these two people at the heart of this whole alleged scandal? Let's get a little context on them.
On one side, you have M. Mathai. This guy was the private secretary to India's first prime minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. I mean, he was right there in the center of power. And the she in the title? According to the text, that's Nehru's own daughter, Indira Gandhi, who was living right there in the prime minister's house and, of course, would go on to lead the country.
All right, let's get into the actual story that the chapter tells. And look, I have to say this again. It is so important to remember that these are unverified allegations from a text whose origins are, really debated. We're just explaining what's written down here.
The text lays everything out on a timeline. It all starts pretty innocently in 1946 with Mathai teaching her how to drive. But it claims things got serious fast. He says their physical relationship started on her birthday in November 1947, and that this kicked off an affair that went on for 12 years.
What's really shocking is just how direct the language is. I mean, the author doesn't beat around the bush at all. He quotes she as being the one to start everything, making her move the day right before her birthday.
And the chapter goes on to describe a relationship that was anything but simple. The author paints this picture of something incredibly passionate, but also really volatile, filled with all this jealousy and conflict, a very complicated connection between them.
Then, the story takes a really dark turn. In one of the most jaw-dropping claims in the whole document, the author alleges there was an attempt to poison her. He writes that she found powdered glass in her milk and actually believed her husband was the one who did it.
So if the affair really lasted for 12 years, how did it all end? Well, according to the author, it wasn't some slow fade. It was a single, dramatic moment. The text it all came to a head in the winter of 1958. Mathai claims he went to her room, knocked, and then found her with another man, a man he describes as a brahmachari, which is like a spiritual ascetic. And for the author, that moment was it, the final straw. He says plain and simple, that was the end. He claims that after that, their relationship didn't just end. It twisted from love into this bitter hatred. Now, the story in the She chapter is already pretty wild, but the version that's been passed around online has an extra piece to it, an afterword that just sends the whole controversy into a completely different orbit. So this afterword, which isn't even attributed to Mathai, gets tacked on to the end of the text, and it just piles on all these other inflammatory and totally unsubstantiated claims. It turns what was a personal scandal into this massive political and religious conspiracy theory. And the claims in here are just out there. The afterword alleges everything from the Nehru family having secret Islamic roots to one of Indira's sons being illegitimate. It even suggests that her own supposed poisoning incident inspired her to poison a political opponent. I mean, these are incredibly serious accusations with no proof offered.
So as you can probably guess, when you combine the She chapter with this crazy afterword, it creates an absolute firestorm online. The public reaction is almost as telling as the text itself.
On one side, you get comments like this. These are people who are 100% convinced the document is real.
that it's this hidden piece of history that the government tried to bury. To them, this is the truth finally coming out.
But then, on the complete other side of the fence, you get comments filled with pure rage. This person just dismisses the whole thing as dangerous, made-up garbage that's basically illegal.
And then you just get raw, gut-level anger. This comment, it's short, but it shows you the intense, personal, and emotional nerve this whole document really hits.
So what are we really looking at here? Is it a detailed, personal confession that rewrites a piece of history? Or is it just a clever political fabrication, a marketing stunt that spun out of control into a viral conspiracy theory? In the end, the She chapter is just a fascinating case study. It's a document that might be less important for what it actually claims, and more important for what it shows us about how we believe and fight over stories from the past in this digital age.